Hello, and welcome to the episode of Todd Talks. When Todd talks, people listen because I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. Yes, today, I hope you're ready because today we are talking about the upcoming death battle that I don't know if anyone actually wanted, but they're doing it, and we must all bow in awe of what they are creating. I did watch the preview. I usually wait till the podcast because I'm a champion. I just had to watch it early, and yeah, they're going full tilt on this. So yeah, we are getting I can't believe this. We're getting SpongeBob SquarePants versus Super Friends Aquaman. Not Aquaman. Super Friends Aquaman. There's a very key difference, as I will explain. This is gonna get nuts, and I guarantee this will not take 30 minutes. If it does, I will be shocked because there's honestly not too much to talk about with one side of these characters. All right, so SpongeBob SquarePants. Yeah, I gotta do the theme song, don't I? Fine. Oh, who lives in a pineapple under the sea? SpongeBob SquarePants, absorbent and yellow and porous as he. SpongeBob SquarePants. If not, I'll go on to be something you wish. SpongeBob SquarePants. The drop on the deck and flop like a fish. SpongeBob SquarePants, right with me. SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes, I know he played it on his nose. I don't care. I was an actual flute player, alright? Yes, SpongeBob SquarePants, one of the most endurant characters in cartoon history, over 20 years of life, and somehow he's been alive for over 20 years, and multiple movies, including a theatrical movie which had a rap song from epic rap battles of history. Believe it. No, really, believe it. It happened. It was written by them. So, yeah, SpongeBob is he's something, ain't he? I have watched SpongeBob SquarePants in the past. I don't know why. I probably was bored. There was nothing on television the days before. I had so much to do, and he is a dork. I mean, even Death Battle people admitted that is his thing. He is a dork. All right, he is a being that we can all relate to because we all know someone like him. He is overly energetic. He is always trying to please. He thinks he's hilarious at times when he's not. Um, he is friendly, but sometimes to a fault. And I mean that in the sense that he'll think you two are friends even though you're not, like Squidward. uh, he's a dedicated person, but usually only in regards to his work and Jellyfish and Bubbles. Um, he's so weird, and yet and that makes for comedy. Like, that's what this is all really about here, is that SpongeBob is the perfect example of a comedic cartoon character, and not even in the Toon Force kind of way, because as they noted in the preview, there are times when he has like an anti-Toon Force, and then other times he can do things that just boggles the mind. Um, and because of that, and because of his setting up Bikini Bottom, they were able to make, again, over 20 years worth of episodes and movies featuring these characters. They even finally did a live action version of the episode. I don't want to know. So yeah, so his origin story is, actually, I couldn't really find it. I don't know why they did the whole Bikini Atoll thing with the preview, but that's technically not accurate. Bikini Bottom has been around since prehistoric times, technically. There was a time travel episode, because of course there was. Um, so he whatever his true origin is, whatever it may be, he eventually became a fry cook at the Krusty Krab, where he's the undisputed expert of making Krabby Patties. Ones that were so good that even King Neptune, one of them anyway, yeah, they can't keep their own continuity, so there's been multiple versions of King Neptune / Poseidon. Um, and one of them, he beat him in a burger making contest, because that's just how good he is. That's one of the episodes I watched, if you couldn't tell. So Oh, really? I watched that one. I can tell you exactly what happened in it. Like, such as how Neptune actually spat back out the Krabby Patty so he could eat it again and enjoy it, which was disgusting, as all get out. Even the crowd thought it was disgusting. Anyway, um, so yes, he's the undisputed master of making Krabby Patties, and most of his adventures revolve around a certain group of friends and coworkers and such that he has. He's got, of course, got Patrick Star. He's got uh Sandy. Oh, I couldn't think of Sandy's name. Sandy Squirrel, who is of course from the surface, but came down because why not? There's Squidward. There's Mr. Krabs. I like money. Pearl actually has a relationship of some sort with SpongeBob. I don't want to dig into it. Uh, they're friends, okay, but he had to fake being her boyfriend once or whatever. Um, he's even got a kind of friendly rivalry with Plankton. Uh, F is for fire that burns the whole house down. U is for uranium bombs. N is for no survivors. Yes, I remember that one too. Uh, but yeah, basically these core characters all go on all manner of insane adventures, and that is the essence of what SpongeBob is. It's because SpongeBob is the person that will get you into trouble or get you into adventures in the best and worst of ways. He has intentionally and unintentionally taken people to places they didn't want to go. There was a time where Sandy was in trouble and he needed the entirety of Bikini Bottom to help him. They didn't want to do it. So what he did was he waited for them to go to sleep, and then he captured them in his bubbles, which I'll get to. And then encapsulated his whole house in a bubble so they could go to Texas so that they could save Sandy Squirrel. What? And that's just one episode. That was one episode. Rodeo Days 1. Other times he's done imagination adventures, which I that was another one I watched where him and Patrick were in the imagination box and Squidward just couldn't understand how these adventures are happening. It was great. There was the magic pencil, which I'll get to. That one led to multiple adventures. Basically, anything you can think of that SpongeBob and Patrick and Sandy and or Squidward could get into trouble with, they got into trouble with. And the joke, for lack of a better term, was that SpongeBob would likely be the cause of everything and would be the reason that they get out through some plot contrived circumstance. That's actually why SpongeBob, as they noted in the preview, is incredibly inconsistent in what he can do at times. For example, if you saw the battle preview, they do a reference to his karate, which he does know. He learned it from Sandy Squirrel. However, at times he is an expert in karate, and at other times Sandy can kick his butt with no effort. She even says that she's his better by a country mile. I like you, SpongeBob. No, Sandy was probably the best character in the show, even though not exact. No, I'm not getting into this. Not getting into this. It's SpongeBob. I'm not getting into this. So, because of his antics and because of the just downright destruction he has caused Bikini Bottom over the years, the citizens basically secretly hate him, and sometimes not so secretly hate him, like in regards to Squidward. There is even an no SpongeBob SquarePants Day. Like, if you remember Avatar Day from Avatar: Last Airbender, it's basically that. They celebrate SpongeBob being gone. The entirety of Bikini Bottom leaves Bikini Bottom to go to a place where they celebrate not being around SpongeBob for a day. Like, that's how much they just don't like him and everything. And yet, at times, he is a very good friend. He's very loyal to Patrick and Sandy and Mr. Krabs and even Squidward. Even Squidward had to begrudgingly admit that he kind of likes him as a friend and all that. And SpongeBob, when a friend is in danger, he will be right at their beck and call to help them. Like, you might remember Sweet Sweet Victory. Yes, I remember that one too. Squidward was about to be embarrassed, and so SpongeBob rallied all Bikini Bottom together and did the epic jam session. It was that was actually a fun episode. I won't lie. But and then other times he just drives people freaking insane. So yeah, it's a thing. As for his abilities, this is all about inconsistency, because at times he can't lift anything, and then as we saw in the preview, he actually turned the world on accident. He he's absorbent because he's a sponge, and yet he can absorb so much water to become the moon without difficulty. Yet he could also get a disease that can cause him to actually have to be taken into the real world, and wrung out like an actual sponge so that he could get clean again. He is brilliant at making Krabby Patties and making bubbles. He can make like anything with his bubbles, as shown in the shows and in the games. But he can't learn to drive a car. But he can drive everything else. He's driving a rocket. He's driving a submarine. He just can't drive a car. And then the one time he could drive a car, or the couple times he could drive a car, one was because Patrick was helping him. He had a hat. He put an antenna in his head and put a hat over it so Mrs. Puff couldn't see it. And so Patrick was giving him advice on how to drive, which is just asinine, because why would Patrick be the person you ask to help give you in drive directions? Anyway, and then another time was because he could do it blindfolded because he tenses up at the wheel. So you put a blindfold on him and he can do it fine. Like, that doesn't make any sense. He knows karate, but he's not exactly the strongest force of nature ever. Arguably his best weapons are his bubbles or his magic pencil, which he can use to draw things and erase things from existence, and which he has done with non-pencil entities, if I recall correctly. He did it on Squidward. He erased parts of his face, if I recall right. So yeah, the magic pencil is definitely overpowered, and yet SpongeBob is not, and yet he's endured multiple things. He's been in car accidents. He's had buildings fall on him. He's had a nuclear explosion, which may or may not have been caused by Sandy Cheeks. I said Sandy Squirrel. Sorry, Sandy's Cheeks. Well, she's a squirrel though. But yeah, he's been hit with a nuclear explosion and been fine. He has been cut and multiplied. He's regenerated. He has popped off his limbs and transformed his limbs. He can do like the Toon Force stretch to where he can, elongate his body to insane degrees and so on and so forth. It's SpongeBob. This is what he does. He's been doing it for 20 years, and it honestly makes me cringe thinking about it, because while I understand why people like SpongeBob, I consider him one of the dumber cartoons out there, and there's a reason I've only watched maybe 20 episodes of my life, and that was probably because I was bored. I was like, SpongeBob was better than nothing at the time, but I won't watch another episode again. Even Liam is like, I wouldn't show anyone in episodes after this date and time because it's got like a Simpsons effect, and I appreciate that. So, I can't believe we're getting him in Death Battle. I mean, that's just the truth. I cannot believe we're getting him in Death Battle, but we are, so you better be ready. All right, next up is Aquaman, but specifically Super Friends Aquaman. Now, to those of you who don't get the joke, there is a reason for this. There are two different versions of Aquaman. There's comic/movie Aquaman, or let's put this other way. There's Super Friends Aquaman, and then there's every other Aquaman. Okay. In the comics, in every non-Super Friends media, Aquaman is depicted as, a legendary hero, a worthy member of the Justice League, able to do incredible feats above and below water and whatnot. And of course, via Jason Momoa, now a hunky aquatic dreamboat, I suppose. But seriously, watch the Justice League cartoon from the 2000s. Like, that's a great version of Aquaman. Watch Young Justice, and you'll see a very wise and, thoughtful Aquaman. Watch Jason Momoa, and you'll see a very strong and powerful and confident Aquaman. Read the comics, and you'll see, this multi-layered character who, especially ever since the New 52, who was definitely a beneficiary of the New 52, became, this incredibly respected hero. You watch the Super Friends, and you get none of that. I watched the Super Friends. It was one of my jams when I was younger because that was it. That was well before Batman the Animated Series or Superman the Animated Series, the Justice League cartoon, or Batman Beyond, and all of them. This was it. This was all you had for DC Comics heroes in certain ways. Sorry, and they did not do well with a lot of those characters. Some of them were cool, I'm not going to lie, but this is one of those shows where hindsight is absolutely 2020, and that 2020 is it sucked. I mean, the animations were simple, the plots were weird. Some of them were good. Like I remember one where Lex Luthor went back in time with Cheetah, Bizarro, and Green Lantern. Oh, sorry, and Sinestro, and or something like that. And they went back in time and basically undid the origins of certain heroes so that they could defeat them later. Like Lex Luthor took Green Lantern's ring from Sur. Cheetah defeated Wonder Woman on Themyscira so she could become the wielder of the lasso and the armor. And someone else deflected Superman's capsule so that it wouldn't hit the Earth or something like that. And like that was brilliant, and that was really cool. And then there was another one where like the robots took over in a way that wasn't evil, and so the Justice League wasn't needed. It was weird. But with Aquaman, it reached to a level of stupid because if you watch, I mean, again, I have not watched these in a while, but I have researched. Yeah, I researched the heck out of this, and I was just like, why was Aquaman scene so lame? And the simple reason was if you rewatch the episodes when he's not in water, he's pretty much useless. In fact, it's specifically stated in the Super Friends cartoon, Aquaman must be in water, and if he is out in on the surface world, he can only be there for about an hour before he starts to weaken. So if you keep him, like, let's just say, in a glass tube in the surface world with no water around him, he's screwed. Like that's Aquaman in the not in the comics, in the Super Friends cartoon. Yes, they did reference the comics, but even as the preview showed today, that's a version of Waterman, not of Aquaman. Mermaid Man, you're not Mermaid Man. That's from the preview. Uh, yeah, it's not Aquaman. It's a terrible version of Aquaman. And don't get me wrong, they did it wrong like most of the Super Friends. Batman doesn't use martial arts. Wonder Woman only uses her magic lasso. Green Lantern is weak to yellow. That's where that stigma came from, and so on and so forth. So it was bad. It was bad. Now, when you had him under the water, yeah, he was, kind of helpful, but he wasn't the most helpful. All right. Like, for example, if you think about in comparison to all of the Justice League members, Aquaman is actually one of the strongest. Like, he contends with Wonder Woman at times with strength and effortlessly beats Batman at points. In the Justice League cartoon, Aquaman straight up beats Wonder Woman in a contest. He takes her into the water and like basically drowns her. She was fine. In the Super Friends cartoon, it stated that he can lift about 8 tons, which is impressive, but that's only 16,000 pounds, which not exactly a lot when you think about superheroes. I mean, that's strong, stronger than all of us, but that's not strong enough. Also, in terms of his aquatic telepathy, as noted in the preview, it can work, but it's not pure mind control. The wiki I saw actually listed it as mind control, but with a huge caveat. He basically has to ask the fish to help him. Just as important, the smarter the creature that the animal is, whatever the aquatic life is, the more it's likely to resist. Like, for example, apparently it's stated in the Super Friends cartoon that he can't control dolphins because dolphins are really, really smart, which is absolutely true. So he has to basically ask the dolphins for help. And so this will also apply to like things like whales or sharks and everything. And also in the show, if he asked the wrong creatures for help, they would actually just attack Aquaman instead of helping him. So nice. Uh, but yeah, in the show, he is shown to be inferior. Like in the preview, they noted that he could swim from, I think they said Florida to Maine in just under an hour, which is impressive. And they said twice the speed of sound, but that ain't that fast. I mean, again, compared to superheroes, that ain't that fast, especially if you're supposed to be in the Justice League. I'm sorry, the Super Friends, right? So Aquaman just kept getting the short end of the stick, and he kept being put in these scenarios where he looked weaker and weaker and weaker, such as where he had a seahorse he would ride called Storm, which is actually from the comics. He But that's stupid. Why would you ride a seahorse if you can, you know, swim twice the speed of sound? And yes, he does. He is shown to swim in the series, but that's not the point. The other thing, you might remember the all-time classic graphic of him like sleigh riding on a couple of fish. Why would you do that? Why do you need to do that? He also has like guns and an aqua lab and an aqua base. Like, hello, you're from Atlantis. Except he's not. He's from Poseidonus, where he actually does have a son, two sons actually. No, sorry, one son, Arthur Curry Jr., and he is married to Mira in the Super Friends. That's canon. Orm is actually his stepbrother from his father's side, not from his mother's side, and he doesn't have powers, which led to their beef. Um, so the elements are there, but it's not. You can control water and certain other things, but it's everything that was cool about Aquaman, as long as it's legitimately cool about Aquaman, is toned down so heavily in the show that it's frankly ridiculous. Like, seriously, it's ridiculous. And that's why there was this stigma against him, even though Aquaman is absolutely an incredible character. He is absolutely someone that we should respect and honor. And because of New 52 and Justice League Cartoon and Young Justice and Jason Momoa now, we do. But it took so long because everyone think like, wait a minute, Aquaman. Oh yeah, that's the guy from the Super Friends, right? Even Honest trailers, when they did their Aquaman one, they even referenced a scene where Aquaman and Wonder Woman are captured and tied up, and Aquaman goes, "My ability to talk to fish appears to be no help, Wonder Woman," and she gives a look like, yeah, like, no kidding, Sherlock. So again, this is one of those things where it's like, at the time, clearly the writers just didn't know what to do, and that's on them. That is absolutely on them too, because they should have handled all the characters better. But this was the time where you could get away with this crap. There wasn't an internet to complain about it. They were just making things because they felt people would watch it and so on and so forth. So yeah, Aquaman, Super Friends Aquaman's not the best. So who wins in a fight between SpongeBob SquarePants and Super Friends Aquaman? It's SpongeBob. SpongeBob's gonna win. Okay, if SpongeBob loses, I am going to be so mad. All right, like, the whole point of this episode is to show the dorkiest aquatic characters ever, and they're doing SpongeBob versus Superman's Aquaman. I am fine with that. SpongeBob wins. Okay, I am going to win this one because SpongeBob. That's wrong, but I have to accept it. All right. So why does SpongeBob win? Number one, aquatic telepathy will not work on him. You could argue whether he's actually smart is debatable, obviously, but given his intelligence enough to talk, to drive, to cook, or whatever, it clearly would not work on him. So Aquaman would have to ask for SpongeBob to stop doing things, and SpongeBob could just go, nah! No. So, hey man, sorry. I've actually never tried the SpongeBob voice. I could do the Squidward laugh. But no, not SpongeBob voice. So that wouldn't work. Number two, SpongeBob, because he's a sponge, and they played up the sponge bit a lot. He would be resistant to pretty much all of Aquaman's attacks. He's absorbent, so he wouldn't need to worry about the water attacks. He's a sponge, so he can just literally take the hits, which he has done before, and yet he's not done before because he got hit by Patrick once, and he actually took the hit, versus other guys where he just took it and was fine. The sea creatures. Now, the sea creatures thing would be like, okay, Aquaman can summon the sea creatures to take out SpongeBob. Maybe, but there are ways around that, not the least of which are SpongeBob's bubbles. If he thinks that someone's going to attack him, especially in a death battle, he can use the bubbles to capture the creatures, which he's done multiple times in the past. The only weakness that Aquaman could theoretically exploit, but was never shown in the Super Friends, is water. Like, his actual water, Because in an episode, SpongeBob and Patrick go to Sandy Cheeks' dome, because remember she's a land mammal, so she has to have an air dome, but they don't know what air is. So SpongeBob gets dehydrated, and it's bad. Like he is shriveled up. I need it. So, but Aquaman in this version cannot drain water from an entity. Mira can do that in comics and the other cartoons, but not Aquaman. So he can't dehydrate SpongeBob. Uh, on the flip side, SpongeBob could capture Aquaman in one of his bubbles and just send him up into the surface, and all of a sudden he's now dehydrated and or floating into space and dies. There's also the question of the magic pencil. He could just erase Aquaman from existence, or like draw something to kill Aquaman, like a Sponge Doodle. Yeah, or was it Frank and Bob? One of those two. So yeah, SpongeBob has every advantage here. He's definitely more endurant. He can turn the world as inconsistent as it is. Because remember, you gotta take the peak, and he's more endurant. He definitely has more variety of offensive weapons that could actually hurt Aquaman versus Aquaman not really having anything to hurt SpongeBob. And even if he could, like, oh, but he could have a shark to rip him to shreds. Okay, but those shreds can become clones of SpongeBob. That's canon. All right, SpongeBob's actually peeled layers off of himself to make clones. And then as you saw in the preview, he was like diced up once and 8 versions of him formed. That's the ridiculousness of SpongeBob. So yeah, I'm picking SpongeBob SquarePants. This is so dang stupid. I'm so sorry, but this is just so dang stupid. How is it that we are at a point where I am rooting for SpongeBob SquarePants versus a DC Comics character because they're doing Super Friends Aquaman? That's how. All right. So 27 minutes, I win. And with that, I made this episode of Todd Talk. What do you think is going to happen with SpongeBob? Oh my gosh, SpongeBob versus Super Friends Aquaman, and who do you think is going to win? And what do you think the finishing blow is going to be? It's either going to be, for me, I think it's going to be bubbles to the surface or magic pencil. So let me know in the comments below. So I thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I know you were listening, and I'll see you around.